Ferrari 4-5.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Houle. It's wonderful to have you here. Very important work, as all of my colleagues have said here today. Ms. Houle, we had Mr. Kevin Lee here. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Home Builders Association. He testified, and his testimony was very powerful, in my opinion. He said, "I'm here to tell you that you will never fix the affordable housing issue with funding alone. There are simply not enough tax dollars to go around. If you don't fix housing affordability, you can never fix your social housing problems. If you don't fix housing affordability, people can't buy homes, and that puts pressure on the rental housing stock." I see you nodding in agreement, so I assume you agree with that kind of statement. But when we talk about, I had the chance to visit the Royal Hospital this past week. They have 240 beds. This is a mental health facility and research facility. And the manager there told me, she said, "Michelle, if I have one message for you," she said, "it's that we do not have access for supportive housing." So she said, "I know it sounds terrible," but she said, "ultimately, these beds don't get freed up." So when you walk by encampments, when you look at people who are truly struggling, there's an interaction there of mental illness. Our emergency rooms for, my community of Peterborough, this is one of the big issues. There's nowhere for people to go. And it's not just housing. It's housing with supports for people who have that complexity. And it's all connected because, to your point today, I take your housing advocate position seriously, but there has to be an accountability factor on the federal government. And, you can't manage anything that you don't mention. And the reality is we keep taxing people, we keep taxing home builders, we keep putting on these costs, and people aren't able to build, which opens up the housing continuum. So my question to you is, I guess as the federal housing advocate, the department spent $1.36 billion between 2019 and 2021, but the Auditor General said the department did not know whether chronic homelessness and homelessness had increased or decreased since 2019 as a result of this investment. How do we ensure that this money, this billions of dollars, is being spent so that we have less encampments and less people who need housing are actually getting housing?
Well, thank you for that question. Now, we need measurable results. We need transparency around these funds, and I spoke about public dollars for public good. And this is exactly what we're talking about. And when we talk about the definition of adequate housing, some people really is adequately housed means being housed with supports. And for some people, it's just a light touch, learning the rights and responsibilities, how to be a good neighbor, how to get a banking account, and being able to pay their rent every month. And some people need a lot more supports. And supports for mental health, for addiction, and it is about housing first. There is no housing first without housing, however. So there is a supply issue, but it is about the right kind of supply. But what I'm talking about, and I've mentioned during my opening statement, is that we need measurable results, we need transparency, we need data. And the non-market housing has provided all of that all along since its investment started 60 years ago. So we need to have those accountability mechanisms in place for the entire housing system to truly be able to understand. As Carolyn Witzman says, we can't count what we don't know, and we can't address what we're not counting.
Exactly. And so I guess to that point, I guess what I'm looking for, and what you say in these testimonies is really what's put in the committee report that goes back to the House that we hopefully evaluate. But speaking to reporters at a press conference on Parliament Hill, the Auditor General said the government really doesn't know if all the housing-related money spent so far, about $4.5 billion across 6 different programs, which is, a lot of the homelessness issue. And when you say transparency and accountability, on the record, I guess what I'm asking you is it doesn't feel like that's in place right now by the federal government and the current government in charge. It doesn't feel like that because obviously things have never been worse. Rent has never been this high. We've never seen these encampments. How do you make sure that there's accountability and measurable results, that the money's actually helping people? What can we do?
Well, first of all, we do need an all-of-government approach, and bringing together different silos. So you talked about health You talked about, housing in other areas. This, it needs to be not just all levels of government, but an all of government approach to be able to understand fully of what's happening. I mean, we're in the data age, but are we collecting good data? And then, there's other laws around privacy who say, we can't share that information because. But there's a lot of opportunities there.